The rain lashed furiously against the glass, blurring the Seattle skyline. Natalie sat on the living room sofa, reading a book her friend had recommended, glancing at the clock from time to time. Her husband should have been home from work long ago, but Natalie wasn't particularly worried. Lately, this had become the norm. Anthony always said things were crazy at the office, so he had to stay late. She put the book down, walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows, and watched the downpour. She remembered how she and Anthony had met several years ago. Natalie had been working at a boutique advertising agency downtown, and Anthony had come in to commission a branding package for his custom high-end furniture company. The attraction was instant, and they soon started dating. Anthony courted her beautifully, taking her to fine dining restaurants, the theater, and art gallery openings. He came across as a serious, driven man with clear goals. A year and a half later, they were married. Natalie left the ad agency to dedicate herself entirely to their home and future family. Anthony made an excellent living, meaning Natalie didn't have to return to the corporate world. However, calling her a typical housewife would be inaccurate. She was passionate about reading, oil painting, and charity work. She frequently hosted elegant dinner parties, charity fundraisers, and intimate wine and paint nights at their house. Meanwhile, Anthony's elite furniture manufacturing business took off, and he constantly expanded his operations. He often stayed at the office until late at night, pouring all his time into the company. Natalie understood that for Anthony, his career and business were a vital part of his identity, and she tried to support him in every way. Still, there were times when she missed human connection and a more active social life. She tried to be patient, believing that sooner or later, her husband's priorities would shift. The rain outside gradually slowed to a drizzle, and the sky began to clear. Natalie went back to the sofa and picked up her book again, but she couldn't concentrate. She thought about how much her life had changed over the years. She had a loving husband, a gorgeous home, and the freedom to do what she loved. Yet, occasionally, she craved a spark, vivid impressions, and fresh emotions. Hearing the sound of the front door unlocking, Natalie perked up. Anthony was finally home. He looked exhausted, but upon seeing Natalie, he forced a smile. "Hey, honey. Sorry I'm so late. Today was an absolute madhouse," he said. Anthony gently hugged his wife, and Natalie felt a familiar sense of security. She knew he loved her, even if his job was currently consuming him. She hoped they would eventually find a harmonious balance in their marriage. "It's okay," she replied. "I'm just glad you're finally home. Let's eat, I made your favorite." They headed to the kitchen. Looking at her husband, Natalie thought that despite everything, she was happy with him. She believed they could overcome any hurdle and build a rock-solid relationship. The evening passed in a quiet, cozy atmosphere. Anthony talked about corporate matters, and Natalie listened attentively, trying to understand what was stressing him out. After dinner, they watched a movie and went to bed. The next day started like any other. Anthony left early in the morning, promising to try to get home sooner. Natalie busied herself with chores around the house, and after lunch, she went for a walk. She loved strolling through the quiet, leafy neighborhoods of the city, enjoying the tranquility. When she returned, she found a text from Anthony apologizing that he was going to be stuck at the office again. Natalie sighed but didn't call him. She knew these delays were tied to massive new contracts. When Anthony finally came home that evening, they made dinner together. Over food, he explained that they had landed a massive new client, and now his team was scrambling to design a complex project on a tight deadline. He apologized for working so much and promised he'd make more of an effort to be home. Natalie placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "I understand, Tony. You're doing this for us. I'm proud of your success, and I know it'll all pay off in the end." Anthony smiled and pulled her in for a hug. They sat there for a long time, enjoying a rare moment of closeness. Natalie felt that despite his insane schedule, their relationship was still full of love and mutual understanding, and so their daily routine continued stable but occasionally monotonous. Natalie tried to spice things up by hosting creative nights and inviting interesting people over. Sometimes she and Anthony would take short weekend trips to Napa or the Oregon coast to escape the hustle. But more and more, Natalie found herself craving something different. She loved Anthony and appreciated the comfortable lifestyle he provided, but she wanted more new experiences, unexpected events that could shake up their routine. One evening, when Anthony was stuck at work yet again, Natalie decided to do something unconventional. She gathered her favorite art books, paints, and brushes, and went out for a walk through the city at night. The atmosphere of the nocturnal streets, the warm glow of street lamps, the bizarre shadows on the brick walls was enchanting. She wandered leisurely through empty alleys, occasionally sitting on a bench to sketch. She felt her inspiration waking up. The colors and images in her mind seemed to come alive. Natalie caught herself thinking she hadn't felt such a creative high in a long time. She returned home late into the night. Trying not to wake Anthony, she spread out her sketches on her desk and smiled. She finally felt alive and fulfilled. The exhaustion of her monotonous domestic life had receded, replaced by joy and inspiration. From that day on, Natalie began taking night walks more frequently. She hoped this newfound creative energy would eventually inspire Anthony too, and they could discover something new together. But months rolled by, and Anthony remained drowning in his work, constantly devising new expansions for his company. He enthusiastically pitched his business plans to Natalie, but she increasingly caught herself feeling like she no longer understood him. It felt as though he lived in a completely different universe, one she couldn't access. One night, coming back from a walk, Natalie saw the lights in Anthony's home office were still on. She quietly slipped inside and found her husband hunched over his laptop. "Tony? You're still awake?" she asked softly. He looked up, surprised. "Where were you so late?" "I was starting to worry." Natalie leaned against the edge of his desk. "Sorry, I was just walking around the city. Sometimes I need a little time for myself. I didn't mean to worry you." Anthony looked at her thoughtfully, then closed his laptop. "Nat, I know I've been spending way too much time working lately, but you know how important this business is to me. I just want us to have the best of everything." Natalie nodded. But Anthony caught the faint sadness in her eyes. "I know. I'm proud of everything you've built. It's just, sometimes it feels like you've forgotten about me." He stood up, walked over, and wrapped his arms around her. "Oh, honey, I'm sorry. I completely forgot that you need more from me than just financial security. I'll try to spend more time with you." Natalie pressed her face against his chest, tears welling in her eyes. She had missed his embrace and his attention so much. "Thanks, Tony. I love you, and I know we'll get through this." They stood there for a long time, holding each other tightly. Anthony stroked her hair, whispering comforting words. The tension slowly drained from her body, and she felt like she could breathe again. They stayed up until morning talking, trying to find common ground. Anthony promised to rework his schedule, and Natalie shared the details of her night walks and creative outbursts, hoping he would support her passions. But the reality was starkly different. Natalie was an active, curious soul, always seeking adventures and new knowledge. She couldn't sit still. Anthony was her polar opposite. Coming home from work, he would complain about how exhausted he was. He never wanted to do anything, and could spend hours just lying on the couch scrolling on his phone. Lately, it had gotten worse. He wasn't just tired, he was irritable, snapping at her over the smallest things. Natalie didn't understand what was happening and chalked it all up to work stress. Natalie and Anthony had been married for 24 years. They had been through a lot and overcome countless hurdles. The crown jewel of their marriage was their 22-year-old daughter, Kira. She was a senior at the University of Washington, studying elementary education. Kira had moved out right after high school when she got her first steady job tutoring kids in Spanish and English. It allowed her to be financially independent from her father and learn how to stand on her own 2 feet. Natalie was incredibly proud of her daughter and supported her in everything. One evening, Natalie heard the front door open. She closed her book, stretched, and went to greet her husband. Anthony was standing in the entryway, frantically texting someone, his eyes glued to the screen. Hearing Natalie approach, he barely glanced up and offered a dry, "Hey, hi. Work problems again?" Natalie asked, walking over to kiss his cheek. "Yeah, just a lot piling up," Anthony said, locking his phone and quickly shoving it into his pocket. "We spend so little time together lately. You're even working weekends. You can't live like this, Tony. You need to find time to rest," Natalie said sadly. "Let's not do this right now. Work is work. Who's going to pay for everything if I don't?" Anthony snapped, slamming the closet door after hanging up his coat. "Dinner is on the stove." Natalie was ready to cry from the sting of his words. She was sick of him treating her so coldly. "And you're not eating?" he asked in a tone completely devoid of care. "No," Natalie said, retreating to the bedroom, discreetly wiping her tears. Anthony didn't even notice she was upset. Honestly, even if he had, he wouldn't have tried to fix it. Lately, Natalie had been stirring up conflicting feelings in him. They had decades of history, but Anthony no longer felt the thrill he used to. It wasn't that Natalie had let herself go, she still looked stunning. Weekly Pilates classes and spa treatments did their job. Plus, she was as vibrant and charismatic as ever, always the life of the party. Yet, in Anthony's eyes, her appeal was permanently gone. Did he love her? Probably more yes than no. But that love had morphed into something platonic. He felt like he was living with a sister or a mother. Natalie sensed the shift and couldn't figure out the root cause. She felt like Anthony was hiding something, and her deepest fear was infidelity. She never wanted to become the kind of woman who spied on her husband, but with every passing day, she felt she had no other choice. She had noticed weird little details she tried to ignore, but they were piling up. The rain outside refused to let up. Natalie stared at the wet glass with tear-filled eyes, wondering what to do. She decided that tomorrow, she would drive to his headquarters in Bellevue and find out if he was really just drowning in client work, or if something else was going on. The next day, she parked near his office building. The drive hadn't been far, but to Natalie, it felt like it took a lifetime. The clock on her dash read 10 minutes to 1, meaning the lunch hour was just kicking off. She turned around to grab the takeout bags she had brought for him from the back seat, but when she looked back toward the entrance, she froze. Her husband was walking out of the glass double doors, and he wasn't alone. He was accompanied by a tall, striking redhead in a tight black pencil skirt and a silk blouse. She was laughing, flashing bright white teeth, and playfully tried to grab Anthony's hand. He didn't let her hold it instead. He pulled her in by the waist and kissed her passionately. The kiss lasted no more than a few seconds, but to Natalie, it felt like an eternity. Tears blurred her vision. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. Anthony never took Natalie to corporate retreats or company parties anymore, and now she finally understood why. When the initial shock wore off, Natalie wiped her face and frantically tried to think. What do I do? Where do I go? Why did I ever quit my job? Now I'm completely dependent on this jerk. One thing was certain. She was not staying under the same roof with him, no matter what. She slammed her foot on the gas and sped away. Arriving home, she immediately started packing her bags. Her thoughts were a chaotic mess. The only clear objective was divorce. She went to her closet, pulled down a hidden lockbox where she had been stashing emergency cash for years, just for a rainy day like this, stuffed it all into her purse, and packed only her most essential belongings. She figured she would deal with the rest once she figured out where she was going to live. For now, she texted Kira, asking if she could crash at her apartment for a few days. Hey! Come on in, Kira said, stepping aside to let her mother into the apartment. Hi, sweetie. Thank you so much for taking me in, Natalie said, dragging her suitcase through the door. Mom, are you going to tell me what happened with you and Dad? I practically lost my mind after your text. Kira was visibly anxious, staring intently at her mother. Of course I'll tell you. Just make me a cup of coffee first. Natalie walked into the small kitchenette and collapsed onto the sofa. I'll make it right now, but start talking. I can't take the suspense. Do you remember a Veronica? Natalie looked up. Veronica? Doesn't ring a bell. Kira frowned in thought. Wait, tall, redhead? Yes. That redhead is your father's mistress. No way. Are you sure? Kira stared at her mother in horror. I wish I was wrong. I saw them kissing right outside his office building today. They didn't even care who was watching. Mom, that's awful. How could he? I don't know, honey. But please, don't let this ruin your relationship with him. No, I don't even understand how this is possible. It's sickening. It's fine. I just need time. It's only been a few hours, and I think I'm already coming to terms with it. Just promise me you won't tell him you know. I want to see how he tries to lie his way out of this. Okay, I won't say anything, Kira said, sitting next to her mom and pulling her into a tight hug. Maybe I shouldn't have dumped this all on you, but I literally had nowhere else to go, Natalie said, regretting that she had to tarnish her daughter's image of her father. Stop it. I'm a grown woman. And honestly, It's better that you know the truth now than wasting more years on him. That thought actually brings me some comfort. You're amazing, Kira. Just never repeat my mistakes. Always stay financially independent. You weren't the one who made the mistake. You're the one who got betrayed. I know, but now I'm left with nothing. I have no job, no house of my own, and I'm intruding on my daughter's college apartment. Don't be ridiculous. You're not intruding. Kira scolded gently. A minute later, Kira's phone buzzed. Answer it. If you ignore it, he'll get suspicious, Natalie whispered through gritted teeth. Kira picked up, trying to force her voice to sound completely normal. Hello? Hey, kiddo. Did your mom call you by any chance? Anthony asked. No, why? Did something happen? Kira faked perfectly. No, nothing big. Don't worry. She was supposed to go to a friend's house today, but she's still not home. I guess she's just having a good time and isn't checking her phone, Anthony lied. He had zero desire to tell his daughter that his wife had packed her bags and bolted. Yeah, probably. Oh, wait, Mom just texted. Says she's fine and will be home soon, Kira lied right back. See? Nothing to worry about. All right, love you, Dad. I've got a ton of studying to do. Of course. Good luck. Bye, Anthony said, hanging up. Natalie had heard every word. The blatant lie about her visiting friends infuriated her. But she reeled her emotions in. Why is he lying to me? I'm going to find out anyway, Kira asked, bewildered. He probably hopes you won't. He doesn't know I saw him with Veronica. He probably thinks I left over an argument and expects me to come crawling back. Maybe you should just confront him and get it over with? Kira suggested. I will, but not right now. I'm not ready to talk to him. That Veronica girl didn't look much older than me. She is. She's only 25. Kira admitted quietly. Unbelievable. Natalie clenched her fists. There will always be someone younger and prettier. If your father did this to me, he'll do it to her too. He'll find someone even younger than Veronica. And dump her next. Or I'll end up with a stepmother who's basically my age, Kira sighed heavily. I think that hurts the most. He destroyed our family for a cliché midlife crisis fling, Natalie murmured. After getting off the phone with his daughter, Anthony walked through their sprawling house one more time to confirm that his wife's things were actually gone. Realizing she had indeed left, he sank into his leather armchair and thought. He didn't feel sad or heartbroken. To the contrary, he felt a massive wave of relief. The marriage, which had only brought him irritation lately, seemed to have naturally resolved itself. He had wanted to ask for a divorce for a long time but kept finding excuses to delay it. His affair with Veronica, which had started 6 months ago, had pulled him in like a riptide. He couldn't imagine his life without her, a fiery redhead who seemed to light up every room. Natalie, by comparison, had become a boring, predictable fixture. He had purposefully distanced himself from her. He knew Natalie had sensed his apathy, and he was glad. He wanted to change his life. He was terrified, but he desired it passionately. And now that Natalie had packed up and left, the heavy burden that had been crushing his shoulders for months simply vanished. He didn't really care why she left. Maybe she found out about the affair, or maybe she just got sick of his coldness. Ultimately, it didn't matter. 3 days after escaping her marriage, Natalie drove over to see her best friend, Julia. She desperately needed to vent. Despite opening up to Kira, Natalie had tried to filter herself so her daughter wouldn't completely hate her father. My God, Nat, you look like a ghost, Julia noted as she opened the door. Natalie had hoped her stress wasn't so visible, but she was wrong. Excuse my appearance, Natalie said sarcastically. I guess my life falling apart is bad for my complexion. Julia leaned back in her chair at the kitchen island. I'm listening. Spill it. You clearly need to talk. Natalie and Julia were incredibly close. They had supported each other through everything. Julia actually had a degree in psychology, but she never practiced clinically. Instead, she made a lucrative living doing high-end tarot card readings, specifically catering to the wealthy clients of her husband, Alex. Alex was a financial analyst and wealth manager. Thanks to Julia's intuitive readings, combined with Alex's actual financial advice on where to invest, their boutique consulting firm brought in massive revenues, and they lived very comfortably. I just don't know what to do, Natalie said, finishing her tearful recounting of the events. "How could he do this to you? You're incredible." "All our friends envied him," Julia fumed. "Honestly, part of me wonders if that little secretary of his put some kind of spell on him. She's super into astrology, manifestations, and all that new age nonsense. It's the only logical explanation for why he'd throw away our life," Natalie said bitterly. "Yeah, well, your Anthony is just a garbage human being. Thank God you found out now so you don't waste another second of your life on that bastard," Julia said, her heart breaking for her friend. Natalie acknowledged that there was a silver lining, but she was terrified. She had no income. Julia promised to talk to Alex. Maybe he had an open position at his firm for her. Natalie was endlessly grateful. "The worst part is that I actually made small talk with this Veronica girl at a corporate Christmas party. I didn't suspect a thing," Natalie lamented. "How long do you think it's been going on?" Julia asked thoughtfully. "Who knows? Don't you want to get back at him?" Julia asked, a glint in her eye. "No, I don't want anything to do with him. I just need to rebuild my life without him. Let him live with his little 20-something. He'll dump her eventually anyway, I guarantee it," Natalie said, staring out the window. The friends sat and talked for hours. Julia was absolutely furious at Anthony for what he had done to her best friend, and a very specific, very ruthless plan began to form in her mind. That evening, when Alex came home from work, Julia sat him down. "Natalie came over today. Anthony has been sleeping with his 25-year-old secretary." "Can you believe it?" Alex was shocked. "Wow. I didn't see that coming. Are you sure it's not a misunderstanding?" "She saw them making out outside his building," Julia confirmed. While Anthony wasn't one of Alex's closest friends, they ran in the same circles, and Anthony had always played the part of the devoted family man perfectly. Julia explained that Natalie had moved in with Kira but didn't want to overstay her welcome. "Do you have any openings at the office for her?" Julia asked hopefully. Alex agreed to see what he could do, but then he squinted at his wife. "I know that look, Jules. You're holding something back. What's going on in that head of yours? You're too perceptive." "I'm just so angry for Nat. I want to destroy him." "Jules, maybe we should stay out of it. They're adults. They'll sort out their divorce," Alex said, knowing his wife's penchant for schemes. "Sorting it out means he keeps everything and she begs for scraps. I won't allow it. You know I'll figure something out," she said stubbornly. "Darling, this is exactly why I married you. But it's going to be the death of me," Alex laughed. "By the way, I booked a new client today. Our investments are looking great. Do our little hustles ever bother you?" "Our hustles don't hurt anyone. Rich people voluntarily come to you for advice on where to park their cash. We don't force them. And in my plan, everyone will be acting completely voluntarily too. Don't worry." Julia knew her husband would have her back. The next day, Julia woke up full of determination. She dressed sharply and drove straight to Anthony's headquarters in Bellevue. She knew from Natalie that Anthony always spent his mornings off-site at client meetings, meaning he wouldn't be in the office. Walking into the sleek, modern showroom, Julia was greeted by a young woman at the front desk. Julia sized her up short, blonde, curvy. No, Veronica is a redhead, Julia thought, flashing the girl a bright smile. "Hi there. I'm interested in commissioning some custom pieces for a new property. Who should I speak with?" "I can take you back to our lead sales manager. He'd be happy to show you our portfolio," the blonde smiled, leading Julia back to a spacious glass-walled office. A handsome man was sorting through fabric swatches at his desk. "Sam, this client is here for a consultation," the receptionist said, stepping aside. "Hello. Please, have a seat," Sam said, standing to pull out a chair. "Thank you." Julia sat down and looked around. "How can I help you today?" Sam asked with a practiced, welcoming smile. "I need to furnish a large vacation home in the San Juan Islands. But before we get into the details, could I possibly trouble you for a cup of coffee?" Julia knew that in a luxury office, the secretary was always the one tasked with fetching drinks. "Absolutely," Sam said, pressing an intercom button to request 2 coffees. "So I'd love to see the range of materials you work with. Exotic woods, custom upholstery. Of course, let me grab our master catalog so you can get a feel for our finishes." Just then, the office door swung open, and a tall redhead walked in carrying a silver tray with 2 lattes. Julia stared at the girl Anthony had thrown his marriage away for, and she was thoroughly unimpressed. Veronica screamed, "Try hard, tight slacks, a blouse unbuttoned just a little too far, long red extensions that she kept dramatically tossing over her shoulder. Julia had to admit she was conventionally attractive, but she looked cheap. It certainly didn't justify what Anthony had done. Julia decided it was showtime. She pulled her phone from her designer bag, held it to her ear, and faked a conversation. Yes. You called me? Yes, of course. I can do a tarot reading for you. Look, I'm fully booked with clients this week, but I can try to squeeze you in. Let me check my schedule. Okay, talk soon. Julia casually slipped the phone back into her bag. Veronica, who was setting the cups down, had frozen. She was staring at Julia with wide, fascinated eyes. Sugar or cream? Veronica asked, her gaze locked on Julia. No, thank you. Julia offered a mysterious half-smile, assessing Veronica to see if she had taken the bait. Excuse me, I'm so sorry, but I couldn't help overhearing your call. You read tarot cards? Veronica looked slightly embarrassed but overwhelmingly eager. I do, Julia said calmly, internally screaming with victory. I'm really into that. Is there any way I could book a session with you? Oh, I don't know, Julia sighed, making a show of pulling her phone back out. My wait list is quite long. I'm not in a rush. I can wait as long as it takes, Veronica pleaded. I think I could fit you in this Saturday at 3 p.m. Does that work? Julia asked, looking at her calendar app. Yes, that's perfect. Thank you so much. Veronica practically clapped her hands together. Julia swore the girl was going to jump up and down. Don't thank me yet, Julia said with a knowing, slightly condescending tone. She pulled a sleek, embossed business card from her purse and handed it to Veronica. I'll see you then, Veronica beamed, tossing her red hair over her shoulder as she practically floated out of the office. Just then, Sam returned with a massive stack of leather-bound catalogs. Here we are. Julia suffered through a mind-numbing 40-minute presentation on the tensile strength of imported oak before promising she would think about it and practically sprinting to the elevator. As she pulled out of the parking garage, she saw Anthony standing by the trunk of his Tesla, looking for something. 5 more minutes in there and I would have run right into him, Julia thought with relief, hitting the gas. That night, Julia bragged to Alex about her flawless execution. Honey, I'm begging you, be careful. The last thing we need is this guy coming after us for fraud, Alex warned, genuinely stressed. Let him try. He doesn't have the brains or the leverage to take me down, Julia said. Ready for war. By the way, I figured out the job situation for Natalie. Our office manager is going on maternity leave in 2 months. Natalie can cover her desk. That's great. 2 months is a bit of a wait, but beggars can't be choosers. I'll let her know. Although, I have a feeling in 2 months, she won't need a job, Julia said, her eyes gleaming with mischief. You are an absolute menace, Alex laughed, kissing his wife before heading to the shower. Meanwhile, Natalie was sitting at Kira's kitchen island, trying to figure out how to navigate her ruined life. She felt herself slipping into a depression. She had enough cash stashed away to take a nice vacation, but she felt incredibly guilty, spending it while crashing on her college-age daughter's futon without an income. She was just opening her laptop to browse Indeed for jobs when her phone rang. It was Julia. Hey, am I interrupting? No, my schedule is completely wide open. In every sense of the word, Natalie laughed bitterly. Don't get too depressed. I'm calling with good news. God, I need some. Hit me. Alex got you a job at his firm. It doesn't start for 2 months because you'll be covering a maternity leave, but the spot is yours. Are you serious? Thank you. Thank you so much. I'll take anything. Knowing she had guaranteed income on the horizon suddenly made her cash stash feel like freedom. Awesome. And who knows, by then, your whole life might change anyway. Julia added cryptically. So pack a bag. Go to a wellness retreat. Go to Sedona or something. Clear your head. You know what? I think I will. I really need to reset. Tell Alex I owe him my life. Will do. Get out of town, Nat. And remember, if you ever need a tarot reading to see the future, I'm your girl. But keep your chin up, Julia chuckled. I will. Oh, I decided I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. Good. The marriage is dead anyway. I don't even want his assets. But on principle, I'm going to take him to court. I refuse to let him live the high life with his little intern while I struggle. Exactly. He acted like a pig. Let him pay the price. And if you need a vicious lawyer, Alex knows the best sharks in Seattle. Do you think I need one? Legally, I'm entitled to half of everything. Anthony is a wealthy, connected man. He will hire a legal team to bury you in paperwork until you walk away with pennies. Don't be naive. I didn't think about that. But I don't have the money for a retainer right now. We'll figure it out. Just don't let him intimidate you. Call his bluff. What do I have to lose? Natalie sighed. That's the spirit, Julia said. Book your spa trip. Let me know when you have news. The next day, Natalie filed the initial divorce papers and called Anthony to give him the heads up. It was the first time they had spoken since she left. Despite everything, they had spent decades together. Natalie had never been a nagging wife. She had rarely complained about his workaholic lifestyle. She was hurt that he hadn't even tried to call her to explain or apologize. Didn't expect you to call. To what do I owe the pleasure? Anthony answered, his voice dripping with an irritatingly smug sarcasm. Don't worry, I'll make it quick. I filed for divorce. Kira is an adult, so we don't have to fight over custody, but the assets are marital property. We'll have to go through the courts. Anthony let out a dark laugh. Kill a laugh? Assets? Honey, you can't even afford a retainer. I'll hire the best sharks in Seattle and tie this up in court for years until you go broke paying legal fees. You won't see a dime. I don't care how many lawyers you hire, Tony. You destroyed our family to sleep with a 20-something. You're going to pay for your mistakes. You can't even afford a lawyer, Nat. Use your brain, Anthony growled, his temper flaring. See you in court, Natalie said coldly, hanging up. She hadn't expected the call to go that way. Deep down, a small, pathetic part of her had hoped he would beg for forgiveness. Instead, he treated her like a parasite. A lump formed in her throat, and standing on the sidewalk, she burst into tears. People walked by, some giving her pitying looks, but no one stopped. By Friday, Kira had dropped her mom off at SeaTac Airport. Natalie was flying down to Arizona for a 2-week wellness retreat in Sedona. Julia had driven her up the wall, wanting to tell her about the grand revenge plan, but she kept her mouth shut. Let it be a surprise, Julia thought. Saturday finally arrived. Julia got to her boutique office an hour early. She couldn't sit still. She was terrified Veronica might have mentioned the appointment to Anthony, and he would realize who Julia was. But her fears were unfounded. At 3 p.m. sharp, there was a knock on the door, and Veronica walked in, beaming. Good afternoon. Please, take a seat. Tea? Coffee? Julia offered smoothly. No. Thank you. I am just so excited for this. I've been to psychics and numerologists, but I've never had a real tarot reading, Veronica babbled, eyeing the deck of cards on the velvet-draped table. Let's begin then. Julia sat across from her and locked eyes with the younger girl. Is something wrong? Veronica shifted uncomfortably. No, everything is fine. Have you decided on your question? Yes. I want to know about the future of my relationship. Cut the deck, please, Julia instructed. Veronica complied. Julia began laying out the cards, her expression turning gravely serious. Oh no. What is it? Veronica braced herself. I'm seeing instability, deception. You are not in a healthy relationship. The cards show extreme volatility. What does that mean? Veronica panicked. It means Julia flipped the death card, followed by the 7 of Swords. This man, he has no future with you. The cards show him with other women. In fact, I see a blonde woman, someone close to his office. He is going to betray you. Are you sure? He loves me. Let's pull another card. Julia pulled another card and sighed heavily. The cards never lie. He has done this before. You are not the first woman he has betrayed, and you won't be the last. Oh my God, what do I do? Veronica's eyes filled with tears. Let's ask the deck. Julia shuffled again and handed it to Veronica to cut. She laid out 3 more cards. Well, Veronica pleaded, this relationship will end in ruin. But I do see a path to immense wealth for you. Wealth coming directly from this man. Wealth? But we aren't even married. The cards say you must take what is owed to you before he discards you. You must secure his financial assets. It's the only way you walk away as a victor, not a victim. How am I supposed to take his money? That, the cards cannot say. But I really like you, Veronica. I hate seeing powerful men manipulate sweet girls like you. I might have a solution. Julia hoped she wasn't pushing too hard. I don't know. Is taking his money really the only way I'll be happy? I am only reading what the universe is telling me. You must take his money, or you will be left with nothing. Veronica was visibly torn, but her absolute blind faith in the occult overrode her common sense. She relied on daily horoscopes to make basic decisions and carried crystals in her bra. This reading felt like a divine mandate. But how? Even if I wanted to? Are you in a position where you have access to his accounts? Perhaps you work together? Julia asked innocently. Yes. I have full access to his banking tokens and corporate accounts. The universe has aligned, Julia gasped dramatically. It is destiny. But what exactly do I do? It's simple. I have connections to a highly exclusive offshore investment fund. I will give you the routing numbers. You wire the money there. It acts as an untraceable high-yield trust. You'll live off the dividends for the rest of your life. But isn't that illegal? What if he calls the cops? What if I go to jail? Veronica's voice shook. Julia flipped one last card, the Sunday. The cards show no prison in your future. You are protected. Look, I'm not forcing you. It's entirely your choice. If you are ready to claim your destiny, you do it. If you want to sit around and wait for him to dump you and ruin your karma, do nothing. Veronica stared at the cards. She liked Anthony, but she was terrified of the spiritual consequences of ignoring a reading. Okay. Give me the account numbers, Veronica whispered. Julia's heart soared. She wrote down the routing and account numbers for Alex's Shell LLC. She didn't want the money going directly to Natalie. It would be too easy for Anthony to trace. Just wire the funds here, Julia said smoothly. Once it clears, the fund managers will email you your investor portfolio. Leave me your email address so they can contact you. Okay, Veronica scribbled her email down. Can I call you if I have questions? Anytime, day or night. Julia smiled warmly. And Veronica? Be careful. It's dangerous to give your heart to married men. I thought you relied on magic for everything, Veronica said. Not everything. But you have a chance to rewrite your stars. Veronica clutched the piece of paper to her chest and hurried out of the office. Driving home, Julia was in awe of her own audacity. She had assumed Veronica was gullible, but convincing someone to commit corporate embezzlement in under 40 minutes was a new personal record. For the next few days, nothing happened. The account remained empty. Julia started to panic, worrying Veronica had gotten cold feet. She still hadn't told Natalie anything. By the end of the week, Alex came home looking incredibly stressed. Julia. In the living room. Now. What's wrong? What happened? What happened is that a 7-figure wire transfer just cleared into our offshore holding account from Anthony's corporate accounts. Did you actually do this? Julia shrieked with joy. She actually did it! Oh my God! This is grand larceny, Julia. We are accessories to a massive federal crime. Alex was pacing the floor. Calm down. Anthony can't prove a thing. The IP address for the transfer matched his office. His authorized user, Veronica, made the transfer using his RSA security fob. I even had her attach a fake vendor invoice for imported offshore materials, so the bank's fraud department wouldn't flag it. It's clean. And why did he supposedly wire this to our LLC? Because giving Veronica Natalie's personal bank account would have been way too obvious. Anthony will assume his mistress robbed him. He won't report it to the police because the money was moved through a legitimate business investment channel by his own employee. He's screwed. Alex stopped pacing and rubbed his temples. You didn't tell me this was the plan. If I told you, you would have said no. You are a terrifying woman. But I'm right, aren't I? Technically. Yes. The money is legally parked in a corporate blind trust. What now? We just give it all to Natalie? Minus the capital gains tax, obviously. We aren't running a charity for the IRS. Julia smiled. And I guess Natalie won't be needing that receptionist job after all. I swear you are going to put me in an early grave, Alex said, pulling her into a kiss. You love it, Julia purred. Meanwhile, Natalie was sitting on the balcony of her casita in Sedona, watching the red rocks glow as the sun set. The desert air was healing her. Her phone buzzed aggressively. She pulled it out and saw a notification from her banking app. Her jaw dropped. A staggering amount of money had just been deposited into her personal account. She refreshed the app 3 times. Is this a glitch? She immediately dialed Julia. Hey, something insane just happened. A massive amount of money just hit my account. It says it was routed through one of Alex's firms. Consider it your divorce settlement, Julia said smugly. I don't understand. Did Anthony pay this? Why? I gave Destiny a little push, Julia laughed, proceeding to tell Natalie the entire story of the tarot reading, the fake investment fund, and Veronica's epic stupidity. Are you out of your mind? Natalie gasped, bursting into hysterical laughter. You actually pulled a heist for me? I can't believe Veronica fell for that. She practically begged me to take the money. Consider yourself fully independent now. You never have to worry about lawyers or Anthony's threats again. Julia. I don't even know what to say. You just gave me my life back. By the way, with this money, I'm having a premium moving service clear out my closet and art studio while Tony is at work today. He gets the house, but he doesn't get to keep my things. You can thank me by buying all the drinks next time I see you. Oh, I bet Anthony is going to absolutely lose his mind when he realizes his accounts are drained. You know, Natalie said, a wicked smile spreading across her face. I have an idea of how to really twist the knife before I leave. I'm listening, Julia said. Natalie laid out her plan for her final exit. By the time her retreat in Sedona ended, Natalie felt like a completely new woman. She had let go of the pain of Anthony's betrayal. The influx of millions of dollars certainly helped, but she realized she was strong enough to stand on her own. She didn't need him. She had made a massive decision. She was leaving the US. She wanted a completely fresh start. She debated where to go, eventually settling on the south of France, the French Riviera. The Mediterranean climate, the art scene, the food, it was perfect. She felt bad leaving Kira, but Kira had her own life in Seattle now. Before getting on a plane to Europe, there was one last piece of business. Natalie flew back to Seattle, marched into a high-end salon, got a chic new haircut, a glowing facial, and bought a stunning designer outfit. She looked vibrant, wealthy, and completely unbothered. She drove to Anthony's office in Bellevue and walked right past the receptionist. She knocked once on his door and walked in. Anthony looked up, startled. Natalie? What are you doing here? Just tying up loose ends, she said, leaning against his desk. Anthony stared at her. She looked incredible. She radiated an energy he hadn't seen in a decade. I came to tell you I'm dropping the lawsuit. I'm signing the uncontested divorce papers. I don't want a single penny of your money. Anthony narrowed his eyes. He had been gearing up for a brutal legal war. What's the catch? This is a trick. No trick. I'm a very wealthy woman now, Tony. I don't need the scraps from your little furniture business. What the hell are you talking about? Did you win the lottery? Something like that. I received a massive inheritance from my uncle in Spain. He just passed away. Turns out, he left his entire estate to me. I was married to you for 24 years. I have never once heard of a Spanish uncle, Anthony said, his face red with frustration. I wasn't obligated to tell you about my extended family. We weren't close, but he had no kids, so it all went to me. Here, my wealth manager's card. Natalie tossed a heavy, embossed black business card onto his desk. The gold foil read, Tio Ladrón, Wealth Management and Offshore Holdings. This is ridiculous, Anthony scoffed, barely glancing at the card. Enjoy your life, Tony. Keep the house. Keep the business. Sign the papers and we're done. Where are you going? That is absolutely none of your business. Have a great life with your little intern. Natalie turned on her heel and strutted out of the office, her heels clicking victoriously on the hardwood floor. Before heading to SeaTac, Natalie met up with Kira to tell her the truth about the money. Kira was utterly shocked, but mostly just relieved her mother was safe and financially secure. I can't believe Dad hasn't noticed the money is missing yet, Kira said as they unloaded luggage from the Uber at the departures curb. He will, probably today. Are you sure you don't want to come with me? Natalie asked, looking at her daughter. Mom, I have midterms next week. I can't just move to France. But I will come visit you for winter break, I promise. Okay. Call me if he goes crazy. Natalie hugged Kira tightly, fighting back tears. I love you so much. Love you too, Mom. Go live your best life. As Kira got into a cab to head back to the U District, her phone rang. It was Anthony. She took a deep breath and answered. Hey, Dad. Kira, where is your mother? Anthony's voice was shaking with a terrifying mix of rage and panic. She's gone, Dad. She flew out today. Where did she go? An hour earlier, Anthony had been sitting at his desk, still confused by Natalie's visit. Suddenly, his phone rang. It was his primary lumber supplier. Anthony, we have a problem. The wire transfer for the mahogany shipment never cleared. We're halting all deliveries. What? That's impossible. Veronica processed that payment days ago. Let me look. Anthony hung up and logged into his corporate banking portal. He stared at the screen. Empty. His operating accounts, his reserve accounts, the corporate savings, everything was zeroed out. The ledger showed a massive, consolidated wire transfer to an offshore LLC. He couldn't breathe. Veronica. His eyes darted to the black business card Natalie had thrown on his desk. Tío Ladrón. He remembered his high school Spanish. Tío meant uncle. Ladrón meant thief. Uncle thief. That bitch, Anthony roared, swiping everything off his desk. The heavy glass paperweight shattered on the floor. Chloe, the receptionist, ran in. Mr. Anthony, is everything okay? Cancel all my meetings! Anthony screamed, grabbing his keys and sprinting out of the office. He drove like a maniac to Veronica's apartment complex. He bypassed the call box, slipping in behind a delivery driver, and sprinted up to the third floor. He pounded his fists against her door. Veronica! Open the damn door! An older woman poked her head out of the apartment next door. Can you keep it down? Where is the girl who lives here? Anthony demanded. I saw her moving out with suitcases 3 days ago. Said she was moving out of state. Something about her astrology chart telling her to relocate. Anthony stumbled backward, utterly destroyed. He was completely broke. His business was paralyzed. His wife was gone. His mistress had robbed him blind and vanished into thin air. He pulled out his phone and called Kira. She's gone, Dad. She flew out today, Kira said. Where did she go? France. Dad, I have to go to class. Figure your own stuff out. Kira hung up. Anthony stood in the dingy hallway of the apartment building, realizing he had lost absolutely everything. He had no one to blame but himself. He couldn't even go to the police, technically. He had authorized Veronica on the accounts, and she had wired the money to a blind trust that Natalie somehow controlled. He had been played by a master. 1 month later. Nice, France. Natalie sat on the sun-drenched balcony of her luxury apartment, looking out over the sparkling azure waters of the Mediterranean. A warm breeze rustled her hair. She had a glass of chilled Sancerre in her hand and a radiant smile on her face. Life was a dream. She had hired a fantastic French immigration lawyer who was handling her residency visas. She spent her days walking the promenade, taking painting classes, and eating incredible food. Julia had flown out to visit for the week, and the two women were currently working their way through a cheese board. I seriously cannot take my eyes off you. You look 10 years younger, Julia said, taking a sip of wine. I have you to thank for that, Natalie laughed. And Veronica? For being so remarkably stupid. I actually forgot to tell you. Julia sat up straight. Veronica emailed me. No way. What did she say? She was absolutely hysterical. She said the investment firm never sent her the portfolio. She has no money, and she had to move into her mom's basement in Ohio. She begged me to ask the cards what she did wrong. You're kidding. What did you say? I told her the cards said she needed to be careful about stealing from married men because the universe demands balance. Julia smirked. Natalie burst out laughing. Remind me never to get on your bad side. Exactly. But enough about my brilliant criminal mind. Tell me about this guy you mentioned on the phone. Natalie blushed like a teenager. His name is Philip. He's an American expat. He used to run a huge real estate development firm in Chicago, but he sold it and moved to the Riviera to restore historic villas. We met at an art gallery opening in Cannes. Oh my God, a millionaire architect in the south of France? This is literally a movie. It really is. We just clicked instantly. We both love art, architecture, and traveling. He invited me to an exclusive exhibition, and we spent the whole night talking. He's so intelligent, so polite, completely different from Tony. He actually listens to me. I am so incredibly happy for you, Nat. You deserve this. He actually has a gorgeous estate down the coast in Cap Ferrat. He invited me there for the weekend a few days ago. We walked through the gardens, drank wine on his private dock. And Julia, he asked me to move in with him. Shut up. Already? I know it's fast, but when you know, you know. He said he hasn't felt this way about anyone in years. I feel like I'm floating. For the first time in my life, I feel completely seen. Julia reached across the table and squeezed Natalie's hand. You went through hell, but look at you now. You survived, you won, and now you get your happily ever after. Thank you, Jules, for everything. Exactly 1 year later, the two friends were sitting on a terrace again. But this time, it was the sweeping stone terrace of Philip's historic villa overlooking a private cove. The sun was setting, casting a golden hour glow over the water. And catching the light perfectly on Natalie's left ring finger was a massive, flawless diamond engagement ring, accompanied by a brand new wedding band.